Welcome to the third Barents Indigenous Peoples Summit. We are very proud to present an amazing list of speakers who will honor the indigenous peoples' cooperation in the Barents region throughout the day. This summit is a meeting place for dialogue between the indigenous peoples and the states. To ensure a broad approach, we have speakers from both governments and indigenous institutions, as well as experts. It is a pleasure for me to first introduce Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway, Chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, Ine Eriksen Søreide. Please, Foreign Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Gøril. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Barents region, I'm very pleased to host the third Barents Indigenous Peoples Summit together with the Samitikis, Sami Parliament, the chair of the Regional Council Västerbotten, and the Barents Working Group on Indigenous Peoples. A special greeting to the representatives of Indigenous people who are taking part today. Of course, we had been hoping to be able to welcome you all to Bodø, in the heart of Sápmi, our traditional Sami homelands. Well, I'm very sorry we're still only able to meet in this virtual format. I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet. I'd like to start by thanking Russia for initiating the practice of biannual Indigenous Peoples Summits, and daily contact between our respective Indigenous peoples has been a core element of the Barents cooperation since the beginning. We have to continue our efforts to further support and develop these networks. It is with this in mind that Norway and Finland are expanding the International Barents Secretariat to include 2 new advisors on Indigenous issues. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in my introductory remarks, I would like to make 5 points about priorities for our cooperation. First, I would like to focus on identity. You've seen that today's program is not only about policies, strategies, and documents, but also about joik, art, and festivals. Indigenous culture is a valuable part of Norway's national heritage, and we're so proud to see that Sami art and culture have received much deserved recognition the past few years. In our recently published white paper on the Arctic, the Norwegian government underlines the importance of exploring new ways of further strengthening Sami culture and Sami businesses through consultation with the Sami Parliament. That's why we appreciate and support initiatives like a business hackathon organized by the Sápmi business area. A strong and vibrant civil society plays a key role in Indigenous issues and in the Barents cooperation in general. That is why the government, through the Norwegian Barents Secretariat, has supported several projects such as the Sami Media Festival. Language is another key part of our identity. It means a great deal to Sami parents that their children are able to watch movies like Frozen in their native language, for a young gamer to access Minecraft in Sami, or for the elderly to use their mother tongue when consulting a medical practitioner. It's encouraging to see so many entrepreneurs providing innovative solutions that facilitate language learning, such as the Geliateko project from the Arctic University of Norway. 2019 was the International Year of Indigenous Languages, with many events and projects throughout the year. The upcoming International Decade of Indigenous Languages will encourage the global community to make a long-lasting commitment to save and strengthen Indigenous peoples' languages. A second point I would like to raise is the importance of listening to our young people. As one of the youth representatives stated in one of our events very recently, the future is here now, and we are the future. Indigenous youth cooperation must be another key pillar in our common efforts. The helpful input and targeted insights we have received from young people, such as the members of the Barents Regional Youth Council and Sami representatives on the youth panel appointed in connection with our white paper on the Arctic, make me very optimistic about the future. Thirdly, I would like to underline the value of involvement. Cross-border cooperation among Indigenous peoples is an essential part of international relations in the North. This is also valuable in our ongoing fight against climate change. We need to do more to showcase and to learn from local knowledge of Indigenous peoples in our efforts to address this threat. And I'm very happy to see that an Indigenous perspective has been incorporated in the update of the Barents Action Plan on Climate Change. In this regard, I want to highlight the importance of coordinated efforts on indigenous peoples between the regional councils in the Arctic. Cooperating rather than duplicating must be our common goal. And Norway welcomes the projects on indigenous peoples that Russia has initiated as chair of the Arctic Council. The fourth point I would like to emphasize is the need for political will. Dialogue is essential to ensuring that the Barents region continues to be characterized by peace, stability, and cooperation. And the COVID-19 pandemic has, of course, entailed vast challenges for all of us, including our indigenous peoples. In the words of multi-talented Sami artist Nils Aslak Valkeapää, if it's worries you want, the whole world is yours. It is true that the pandemic has halted many activities and forced our efforts onto digital platforms. However, as chair, I'm proud to say that our cooperation has continued to develop, even in these very demanding times. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight the value of knowledge and of learning from each other. Knowledge is one of the priority focus areas for the Norwegian chairmanship. And today, we will listen and learn from the Sami, Veps, Nenets, and Komi people, who represent the heart and soul of our cooperation. I'm certain that our discussion will lead to new wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister Eriksen Søreide. We are very pleased to host the summit together with the Sami Parliament of Norway. The Sami Digi is also chairing the working group of indigenous peoples under the Barents Council. We will now go to Kautokeino and bring in Sami President Aili Keskitalo. President Keskitalo, Boris, we are very glad to have you with us. And let me thank you for the very pleasant and good cooperation with the Sami Digi and the working group in preparing for the summit. Please, President, over to you.
Good morning, dear ministers, indigenous sisters and brothers, friends in and of the Barents region. It is a pleasure for me in a digital way to welcome all of you to Sápmi, the homeland of the Sami people. Today, I am in the Sami Parliament's office in Kautokeino, my hometown. The Sami people is the people of 8 seasons, and this is Kesämannu, the month we approach Kessi, the summer. We have had beautiful summer weather for a week, without the mosquitoes that usually accompany the summer in the north. According to a Sami saying, the mosquitoes should arrive midsummer at the latest, with the support of walking sticks if necessary. Although I do not miss the chuoika mosquito, the feeling of summer warmth without them gives a feeling of unease. In these times of climate change, all variations in weather conditions makes me ask, what does this mean for our nature? Is this a message we should be listening to? I've had the honor of representing the Sami Parliament on the 2 earlier Barents Indigenous Summits in Moscow and in Liksho, and I have high expectations of this summit. Minister Søreide underlined the importance of indigenous cooperation over the borders in the Barents region, and I join her in that. This is especially important for the Sami people, as the borders between the cooperating states and regions cross Sápmi, the homeland of the Sami people. The indigenous peoples of the Barents region need and expect the support of for our cross-border cooperation. This makes the summit exceptionally important. But remember this, the Barents Indigenous Summit is not only a forum for indigenous cooperation, it should be a forum for cooperation between the indigenous peoples and the states we live in. Like everybody else, the Sami people are struggling with the consequences of COVID-19. But the fact that our homelands are divided by the borders of 4 states has affected us differently than other citizens. Border traffic has been restricted since March 2020, and these restrictions have had a significant impact on the Sami society, our economic, social, and cultural life. Family and social relations has been strongly disrupted, and this have especially affected our youth, children, and elders. Our message is that the states that have made borders across the Sami homelands needs to coordinate and harmonize pandemic regulations and restrictions. The pandemic has also underlined the need to secure crucial information on health issues in Indigenous peoples' languages. This is why I'm so pleased that the states we live in have supported the UN International Decade of Indigenous Languages to take place from 2022 to 31. I will have an opportunity to expand on the needs and possibilities of the decade later today in the second session, and I'm excited to get an update on the language situations from all parts of the Barents region. I'm looking forward to an inspiring day. I believe we have a lot to learn from each other as we exchange good ideas and discuss potential future solutions. Thank you for your attention. Ologito.
Thank you very much, President Keskitalo. You are absolutely right that we have a lot to learn from each other, and we do hope for many, many mosquitoes to arrive by midsummer. Dear Barents friends, the dynamic between the national and regional level is one of the reasons behind the success of the Barents Cooperation. The Norwegian chairmanship is organizing all of our events in close cooperation with regional chair Västerbotten. I'm happy to now introduce co-host, governor and chair of the regional council, Helene Hellmark Knutson. Governor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Minister, President, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Barents Cooperation. It is truly a pleasure for me to be here with you today. And my name is Helene Hellmark Knutson, and I'm the governor of Västerbotten and the chair of the regional council. I'm very pleased to host the third Barents Indigenous Peoples Summit together with the Sami Parliament of Norway, the Norwegian chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, and the Barents Working Group of Indigenous People. Even though we cannot meet in person in these times, the Barents Cooperation has succeeded very well in moving to digital meetings instead of physical. Much of this has to do with a stable foundation that has emerged throughout the years and that we now can continue to build upon. The Barents Cooperation is unique. During the past decades, the region has developed a cross-border, people-to-people cooperation that stands out in a global context. The Barents Cooperation includes stakeholders at national, regional, and local levels, as well as societies of Indigenous people. The Indigenous people of the region, the Sami, the Nenets, the West, are sitting at the same table, create a unique environment and spirit. The Sami people are Sweden's only Indigenous people. The Sami culture is a natural part of Västerbotten's history. Long before the Swedish culture had developed, the Sami people already populated the Scandinavian peninsula. In Västerbotten, there are 6 mountain Sami villages and 1 forest Sami village. The history of Västerbotten is also the history of the Sami people. As governor, I'm grateful that so much of the history has been preserved and that it is available for coming generations to see and to learn from. All Barents countries are enriched with Indigenous peoples. They possess a unique door to the past, as well as an important voice of the future, as we need to strive towards a more sustainable society. Experiences and knowledge from the Indigenous peoples are crucial for a sustainable development. The active participation of Indigenous people in the Barents Cooperation is naturally necessary and has been a part of the Barents Cooperation for a long time. Västerbotten has worked to ensure the involvement of the Indigenous people in all aspects of the Barents Cooperation. Västerbotten has been the regional chair of the Barents Cooperation for almost 2 years now. We base our chairmanship on close cooperation with national, regional, and local actors. We work closely with the Norwegian chairmanship of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, as well as with stakeholders at all levels to achieve the best possible results. The strength of the Barents Cooperation lies in the people of the region. That is why the regional level is so important. Västerbotten is working to enhance people-to-people contact, especially among the younger generation, because the youth is the future of the Barents region. Keeping youth in our region is a common challenge. Gender equality contributes to regional prosperity and development. These are questions that we have paid and will pay extra attention to in our chairmanship. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected our daily lives and has had a huge economic and health impacts. It has highlighted the importance of cross-border dialogue in the North and the need to further strengthen the Barents Cooperation. The situation for the Indigenous people in the Barents region is particularly difficult. The Barents Cooperation serves as a platform for enabling Indigenous people's voices to be heard at all levels, as well as for addressing pressing issues and exchanging valuable knowledge and experience across borders. 11 years ago, in 2010, was a very important year for the Indigenous people of the Barents. Then the first Barents Indigenous Peoples Congress was held in Kirkenes. The Congress agreed on a resolution regarding the role of the Indigenous people within the formal structure of the Barents Cooperation. And I'm glad that you, the Indigenous people, stood up for your right to represent yourself. That resulted in that Indigenous peoples were granted status as a permanent participant in the Barents Euro-Arctic Council and in the Barents Regional Council. Since then, all regional and national chairs of the Barents Cooperation have stressed the uniqueness in regard to the Indigenous people's participation in all spheres of the cooperation. That has really increased awareness of the Indigenous peoples of the Barents region among decision makers and key players in the Barents Cooperation. And I'm looking forward to a very interesting day that will highlight the importance of the Indigenous people in the Barents Cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor Helmar Knutsson. Thank you for sharing the historic perspective as well. Dear all, as the foreign minister said, we are truly sorry that we could not welcome you in Bodø in Nordland today as we had planned for. The region of Nordland is home to the Lule Samis. To bring some of the soul of this region, we have prepared a treat for you and invited Lule Sami artist Ronja Larsen to perform for us today. Enjoy the sound from Sápmi.
si det nu igen. Är det det du vill höra? Jag måtte ut och finna mig själv igen, men jag slapp aldrig taket. Jag har sagt det før, kan si det nu igen. Är det det du vill höra? Du ser på mig förvirrad och tom, och jag vet att det tar tid att finna tillbaka till där vi stod. Men jag älskar dig. Är det det du vill höra? Ja, jag älskar dig. Är det det du vill höra? För jag älskar dig. Är det det du vill höra? Käre, jag älskar dig. Är det det du vill höra?
That was beautiful. Our sincere thanks to Ronja and Elias for a lovely performance. Now we will have comments from the members of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council. We're happy to travel to Brussels, unfortunately only virtually this time. We are very happy to welcome Special Envoy for Arctic Matters from the European Union, Michael Mann. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak on behalf of the European Union at this very timely and important event. Thanks also for the beautiful song we just had. That's really set the tone very, very nicely. As many of you will know, the EU is currently updating its Arctic policy. It's been more than 5 years since we published our most recent Arctic policy document, and much, as everyone knows, has changed since then. Climate change has brought dramatic changes to the Arctic regions. The melting of ice on land and at sea and the thawing of permafrost is accelerating. Wildfires are becoming the norm rather than the exception. Geopolitical and economic interest in the Arctic regions is greater than ever before. And while this presents many challenges for policymakers, for the indigenous peoples who've lived there for centuries or even millennia, it's nothing less than an existential threat. And that's why it's more important than ever that we policymakers take heed of what indigenous peoples with first-hand experience of the changes they face in the Arctic have to tell us. It's they who are living through these huge upheavals, who have intimate knowledge and experience of the changes on the ground, and whose traditional ways of life are facing potential destruction. As recent revelations in Canada have shown, the interests of Indigenous peoples were too often disregarded, with awful consequences. The European Union understands your pain at these terrible historical events. In Brussels, we've held broad consultations with stakeholders in preparing our updated policy. This has included regular contacts with the Sami Council, who also made an excellent written contribution to our public consultation. I've also taken part in many public events, including a very illuminating webinar alongside Aili Keskitalo, who we just saw, the president of the Sami Parliament. We in Brussels hear the voices of the Sami people loud and clear. We also understand how important it is to thoroughly assess all potential adverse impacts and negative effects of projects, such as green energy projects, on traditional ways of life, such as reindeer herding, and on the environment in general. The EU will continue to engage with Arctic indigenous peoples to ensure their full and meaningful participation and that their views and rights are fully respected and promoted in the ongoing development of EU policies affecting the Arctic. As you know, the EU organises a dedicated annual dialogue with Arctic indigenous peoples. This has now been running for several years and has been a major element in designing both our current and our future Arctic policy. And it will remain an essential part of our future commitment. Its aim is simple: to learn from each other, to share good practices, and to improve and strengthen practical forms of cooperation. The next EU Arctic Forum is scheduled to take place in Brussels on the 10th of November 2021, back to back with the Indigenous Peoples Dialogue on the 11th of November. We hope, of course, very much that by then we will be able to have physical meetings. This is an excellent opportunity for stakeholders to discuss important concerns and find ways of addressing them with people who really know what's at stake. There are already a large number of ongoing EU projects and programs in support of Indigenous peoples. Most of the Arctic projects funded under the EU's research program, Horizon 2020, are engaging with local and Indigenous peoples. The European Commission organised a successful project with the Sami Council on awareness raising in 2019 and 2020. Importantly, the EU is also committed to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and we're seeking to mainstream the Declaration's principles in our policies. We are therefore looking into how we can ensure meaningful consultation and cooperation with Indigenous peoples to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent in the development and adoption of laws that may affect them. We're now working hard on our updated Arctic policy and hope to complete our work by October. I'm confident that it will illustrate our desire to continue to improve our engagement with Indigenous peoples in the Arctic. Thanks very much once again for inviting me to speak, and I wish you a very successful day.
Thank you very much, Special Envoy Mann, for your interesting intervention, and we thank the EU for your interest in Arctic matters and your dedication to Indigenous peoples in the Arctic. We are also very glad to have the EU as a partner during our chairmanship. Now I would like to introduce Finland, the incoming chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council. State Secretary of Finland's Ministry of Justice, Malin Benchar, please, over to you.
Thank you. Distinguished hosts of this event, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to participate in this summit concerning the importance of Indigenous peoples in the Barents cooperation. Cooperation is key when we strive for sustainable development in the area. In Prime Minister Sanna Marin's government program, it is stated that the importance of the Arctic region as a whole has grown. The Finnish government is preparing a new strategy on Arctic policy until 2030. The strategy includes 4 priority areas, which are climate change, inhabitants, Arctic expertise, and infrastructure and logistics. All activity in the Arctic region must be tied in with the capacity of nature, the need to protect the climate, the importance of sustainable development principles, and especially with respect for the rights of Indigenous peoples. From these standpoints, we are also able to promote economic development in the area. The new strategy on Arctic policy has a section concerning the rights of the Sami people. The measures in this section concern, for example, cross-border cooperation, teaching of and in Sami languages, and the truth and reconciliation process together with the Sami. The COVID pandemic has also made border crossing more difficult, which of course affects the Sami people. Finland has prepared for a truth and reconciliation process since 2017. The work has been carried out with the leadership of Prime Minister's office, the Sami Parliament, and the Skoltsami Sida Council. Our goal is that the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission concerning the indigenous Sami people begins very soon. The Commission will be the first Truth and Reconciliation Commission that Finland has ever had, and it will be a unique, historic process for us. The indigenous Sami people have experienced racism and discrimination during previous times. The aim of the Commission's work is to identify, assess, and learn from the historical but also present-day discrimination. This includes, for example, the earlier assimilation policies of the Finnish state and violation of the rights of the Sami people. I'm confident that the work carried out by commissions in Finland and in the neighboring countries will benefit us all in the future. Furthermore, the government has continued the work on reforming the Sami Parliament Act. The UN Human Rights Committee has stated that the current situation concerning the electoral register of the Sami Parliament is a breach of the UN Convention on Political and Civil Rights. A committee consisting of representatives of the Sami Parliament and the government parties has finished its work in May, and our goal is to submit a government bill to the Parliament in November this year. Finland will be the next chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, starting in October this year. Finland is looking forward to work closely with the BEAC, Working Group of Indigenous Peoples, in all aspects, and our presidency and Finland supports the arrangements of the next Indigenous Peoples Summit that is planned to take place in 2023. We aim to have a fruitful cooperation with the Indigenous Working Group in this matter. Thank you, and I wish you a fruitful discussion during the day.
Thank you very much, State Secretary Brencher. You raised many important points. And thank you, Finnish friends, for the close cooperation and support to our chairmanship. It is good to see the incoming chair so committed and active. I'm happy to now introduce the Sami Parliament of Finland. Please, President Thomas Aslak Juuso, we welcome you. We look forward to hearing your remarks.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody, distinguished Minister of Foreign Affairs, distinguished representatives of states, regional authorities, and indigenous peoples, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to meet with you today in the third Barents Indigenous Peoples Summit. The summit offers an opportunity to further strengthen the regional cooperation on matters regarding indigenous peoples through a dialogue between indigenous peoples in the Barents region and the national and regional authorities. The world and our region has changed drastically after the last summit was held in 2019 in Sweden. The coronavirus pandemic has affected indigenous peoples in the unprecedented way, also at the regional level. Indigenous peoples that live across more than one country, as the Sami people does, have not been able to meet each other over the cross borders. Due to the pandemic, border traffic at the external borders of the states were restricted, and the regional cooperation between indigenous people has been hampered due to traveling restrictions. The climate change continues to pose a fundamental threat to the region. According to the scientific community, the climate change is much more as intense here than in the rest of the planet. This is resulting in widespread social, environmental, and economic impacts. The indigenous peoples of the region are especially in an increased vulnerable situation since of the close connection between traditional livelihoods and nature. Simultaneously, we are uniquely positioned to respond to the impact of climate change. There is an ongoing need to strengthen the ability of Barents region's indigenous peoples to participate and genuinely influence in climate change-related decision-making and policies. Simultaneously, indigenous peoples are affected by policies or actions that are aimed at addressing climate change or developed regions, such as large renewable energy projects. The right to self-determination and the right to participate in decision-making matters concerning indigenous peoples should not be impaired in exceptional circumstances or thereafter. As the overall objective of Barents cooperation is sustainable development, securing indigenous peoples' rights, healthy and lively society, culture, and language is fundamental. We, the indigenous peoples of Barents region, would like to maintain our traditions, foster the nature, and keep it healthy and intact. Securing rights over land and natural resources and respecting the right to self-determination of indigenous peoples is fundamental while protecting biodiversity and tackling the climate change. This year's summit will continue the discussion on indigenous people languages. Indigenous peoples speak more than 4,000 languages. Many of them are endangered. In the Sami, all of the Sami languages are endangered. Even the North Sami, which is most commonly spoken. The governments are aware of the language crisis and have introduced legislation, policies, and programs to address it. However, greater efforts are needed. I hope that today's discussion will aid us to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Juuso, for your clear messages. You are absolutely right that the indigenous perspective is important in the work to combat climate change, and we're very happy to see the working group on indigenous peoples involved in the updating of the Barents Action Plan on climate change. Friends, we will now go to Reykjavik. Director General Jon Erlingur Jonassen of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iceland. We are very glad to have you with us today, and let me congratulate you on a very successful chairmanship in the Arctic Council. It's not easy to chair an international organization during the pandemic, but you have inspired us. Please, the screen is yours.
Good morning. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me at the outset thank the Norwegian chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council for your comprehensive and professional work in operating and strengthening BEAC cooperation in any way possible. Let me also commend the President of the Sami Parliament of Norway, Keskitalo, and chair of the Working Group of Indigenous People, Muotka, for strong efforts in difficult times. Finally, also, I'd like to thank Västerbotten as a chair for the Barents Regional Council. Iceland highly values the BEAC as a platform for democratic dialogue, particular cooperation people-to-people contacts with strong focus on indigenous people. Mr. Chair, despite distances, Iceland has strong political and historical connection with the Barents Sea region. and cooperation with the region is high on the foreign affairs agenda. The diversity of tasks and projects inside the BEAC family is a strong indication of our common beliefs. Achievements made in areas such as economic cooperation, connectivity, health, and youth, to name a few, should be recognized and recommended. In many ways, the BEAC is uniquely suited to add value to the development of the region by fostering mutual understanding, building trust, people-to-people contact, in which Indigenous peoples play an important part, and by deepening cultural and political ties. We warmly welcome the strong focus on youth in all areas of our cooperation during the Norwegian chairmanship. Our meeting reflects, well, the core role of the value of the BEAC and touches upon principal issues that we hold dear and would like to nurture in fields of economic cooperation, environment, and climate change. In a region where global warming is increasing at a more than twice the rate of the global average. I also would like to highlight the reaffirmation of the commitments of the BEAC member states to the implementation of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In this context, we welcome the increased focus on synergies between multilateral cooperation formats and the need to strengthen overall regional cooperation. We need to enhance our cooperation between the sister organizations in the region, such as the Council of Baltic Sea States, the Nordic Council of Ministers, Northern Dimension, and the Arctic Council. I take the opportunity to applaud them all for their annual consultation meeting. Closer cooperation between these regional actors will benefit us all. Iceland has just concluded 2 years chairmanship of the Arctic Council, where 6 associations of indigenous people have a seat at the table as a permanent participants. Chairing the council gave us an opportunity to dive deeper into all aspects of the Arctic Council's work, and being the only Arctic state without indigenous populations of our own, we highly appreciate the close cooperation with the indigenous permanent participants. Their leadership in the Council's engagement with youth sets an example to the rest of us. The permanent participants are indispensable partners in the Council's project. One to mention is on wildfires, which are a growing threat in the Arctic region, a shining project example of excellent regional cooperation. Mr. Chair, over the years, BEAC has matured and successfully expanded into new areas of cooperation. It now fosters a new sense of unity and a closer contact between people. We express our strong commitments to the BEAC as a vehicle for building mutual trust, understanding, and good neighboring relations. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks and kind words, Director General. You're absolutely right that coordination between the different regional councils is very important. And actually at the Foreign Ministers meeting in Tromsø in October, all the councils, the chairmanships will be present. That will be an opportunity to coordinate well. Our next speaker is in Moscow. We are very pleased to have the Federal Agency of Ethnic Affairs of the Russian Federation in today's program. I'm happy to virtually pass the microphone to Head of Division Timur Tsibikov. Welcome, Mr. Tsibikov. Please, the floor is yours. Пожалуйста.
Dear Moderator, thank you for giving me the floor. Dear colleagues, I am glad to welcome participating of today's meeting. It is gratifying that Russia's initiative taken back in 2017 to hold these summits continues. It is gratifying that now the summit has become a good tradition and provides a platform for an equal dialogue between representatives of government, society, and indigenous peoples. In Russia, the indigenous population receives great attention by the state. In 2020, we managed to achieve a lot in the areas of legal regulation, healthcare, and international cooperation. As a part of the state program, we continue to implement a set of measures to support the indigenous population, including preservation and protection of their original habitat and traditional way of life, allocation of subsidies to the constituent entities of the Russian Federation to support indigenous population. In 2020, about 120,000 people took part in activities promoting culture and the traditional way of life of indigenous population, which is a very big figure in spite of the pandemic. As part of the support to indigenous peoples in 2020, amendments were adopted to a number of legal acts. A mechanism for compensation for losses caused to indigenous population as a result of damage to their original habitat was established. Registration of persons belonging to indigenous population was set up. The Russian government is currently considering a draft law on clarifying and regulating the procedures for establishing territories for traditional use of natural resources by indigenous peoples. Amendments are made into legislation that will allow the government to establish procedures for approving alphabet, spelling, and punctuation rules for the indigenous languages. As for the Arctic zone, the last year, Russia approved several documents. These are the fundamentals of state policy in the Arctic, the strategy for the development of the Arctic zone for the period up to 2035, the program of state support for traditional economic activities in the Arctic, as well as the center of responsibility of industrial companies in regards to indigenous groups of the Arctic, the National Public Council of the Arctic Zone to monitor the observance of their rights. Probably you know about the situation with the oil spill on the Timor Peninsula, but the state and communities of indigenous minorities managed to take control of it. All necessary examinations have been carried out. The damage has been estimated, payments have been made to the victims, a plan for the remediation has been prepared. In COVID-19 pandemic, indigenous peoples have become one of the most vulnerable groups of the population. During the outbreak of the pandemic in Russia, weekly monitoring of the situation in the regions was carried out. Recommendations were sent out to reduce the impact of the pandemic on the indigenous communities. Currently, vaccination is being actively carried out. Mobile teams are operating in hard-to-reach areas. In the international arena, the Russian Federation is actively participating in preparation and implementation of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. There are 2 Russian representatives in both the steering committee of the decade and the global organizing committee. We already established National Organizing Committee for the decade. It is planned to include federal ministries, deputy heads of the regions, research communities, cultural communities, industry, media, and, of course, indigenous peoples' organizations in the committee. When preparing the action plan for the decade, we intend to include fundamental conceptual activities with a multidimensional focus, including development of educational programs in native languages and native literature for the indigenous groups in Russia, development of teaching aids and a digital portal for 15 languages for indigenous groups in the Russian Arctic, upgrading the campus of the Institute of the Northern Ethnical Groups at the Herzen Pedagogical University. This year, we plan to publish textbooks in Vepsian and Nenets languages. Dear colleagues, Russia is interested in international cooperation for providing support to indigenous peoples. We also opened a dialogue during the possible joint events of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages during the Russian chairmanship of the Arctic Council and, of course, in the Barents Cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your attendance and an interesting intervention, Mr. Tsibikov. And we're very glad to have Russia with us as the current chair of the Arctic Council. And we look forward to further cooperation on indigenous issues in the Arctic. We are very pleased to also be joined by the Russian Association of Indigenous Peoples of the North, Raipon. Welcome, Raipon Vice President Yuri Katansevsky. We look forward to hearing your remarks.
Здорово, Хибери, Кирх, Колаш, Канц, Кирхан, Арамхат, Сибра, Никат.
I would like to send my greetings on our native languages, Nedes, Sami, and Veps language, and I would like to greet you on behalf of 40 ethnic groups that are represented in the Russian Association of Indigenous Peoples of the North Siberia and Far East in the Russian Federation, and I would like to express my best wishes to the collaboration. And our leader was not able to participate today. He is on travels in our regions. And of course, I would like to express my great gratitude to the organizers of this third summit of indigenous peoples. For 1 year ago, we met in Sweden, where we performed a joint work on joint issues and problems that we are facing in our everyday work. And the most important element, of course, was networking and meeting each other. It cannot be replaced. Today's situation is really very complicated. We have a range of challenges standing in front of us, including COVID-19 pandemic that we, to my opinion, are battling quite well. And I will base myself on the expression from Mr. Tsibikov concerning vaccination of our population. And I'm very happy that our indigenous peoples are less suffering by the pandemic. Today, the most important work for us is work with our youth. We do realize that they are our future, and our work in this direction is being performed very actively, and the Youth Committee is being performed in different directions and different platforms. Today, we have just completed our presidency in the Arctic Council, and by Icelandic presidency in the Arctic Council, and we have signed the declaration on Reykjavik. So we know that the next presidency will be held by the Russian Federation, and this is a great honor for us, and we expect a lot from the events that will be held also in our country. We do realize that world is being changed. Climate is being changed, and first and foremost, it will impact indigenous population. Therefore, the perspectives of our development, primarily maintaining our traditional economic activities, is the most important priority for us. Therefore, we have adopted a new strategy of the development of the Arctic zone in the Russian Federation. We have really actively participated in its elaboration, and we have worked on the presentation of the indigenous population in the Far East and in the Arctic. And we do try to collaborate with all levels of public authorities, with municipal, executive, state authorities, and we do realize the situation that is being forming around the native languages of our population. Today, we are actively involved in the work of our association in the Arctic zone. And we understand the importance of education of our young people. We have therefore entered into the agreements with our educational institutions, our universities, where our youth has been allocated a certain quota. Of course, healthcare of our population is very important, and which involves a very close monitoring and organizing prophylactic events in order to maintain the health of our population. Thank you very much. I do wish everyone a very fruitful work. Thank you a lot again for inviting me and the possibility to participate in this Summit of Indigenous Populations. Thank you.
Very much, Raipon Vice President Khatanseski, for sharing your thoughts. You're absolutely right that education and details like textbooks is really important in the preserving on indigenous languages. We will address that more in detail in the session 2. We are really pleased to have you with us at the summit. Thank you. We will now go to Stockholm. Sweden hosted the last Indigenous Peoples Summit in Lycksele in 2019, and I had the pleasure of taking part myself, and I think we all have great memories from meeting actual people, so we look forward to when that is possible again. I would now like to welcome State Secretary of the Ministry of Culture of Sweden, Helene Öberg. Please, State Secretary, the floor is yours.
Your Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends of the Barents Euro-Arctic region, I wish to thank the host for inviting me to participate and for the possibility to address the Barents Indigenous Peoples Summit. I'm very honored. On behalf of the Swedish government, I wish to start by underlining Sweden's strong and long-standing commitment to cooperation in the Barents Euro-Arctic region. I also wish to convey Sweden's most sincere thanks to the Norwegian government and the Norwegian Sami parliament for their ambitious chairmanship. Your steady efforts are benefiting our common region greatly. And finally, Västerbotten region, contributing in an important way as the chair of the regional council. The Barents Euro-Arctic region is one of the most dynamic cross-border regions in Europe. I know that we are all both proud and grateful for the way our dialogue has developed. We have achieved many concrete results. But let me say this. When we believed our regional cooperation could not become more important to us, the past year showed us that it could. The pandemic brought us and brings us from enormous challenges and tremendous experiences. Many individuals and families were faced by tragedies and still are. Lives and lifetime achievements have been and are being ruined. The crisis brought us together, but it also tore us apart. Each day showed us the importance of well-functioning cross-border cooperation. It was of greater importance than ever for the indigenous peoples who are subjected to borders which are historically not their own. In this regard, similar legislation in our countries is of essence. A top priority of the Swedish government is climate and environmental policy. Our goal is creating a society free of emissions with consideration for people, animals, and nature. Our policy also aims to decrease our impact on climate change. We strive to create a sustainable society. The Barents region is warming at more than twice the rate of a global average. These changes will have severe effects on ecosystems, societies, and communities, and especially on the indigenous people. Many environmental issues are global in nature. A large part of the work takes place in collaboration between countries. But in order to tackle environmental challenges, we need to strengthen the cooperation between the national and regional levels, like in the Barents region. We also need to increase the involvement of indigenous peoples, non-governmental organizations, and youth. The future of indigenous peoples' culture and traditional livelihood depends on access to land and water areas. Protection and sustainable use of these areas need to be guaranteed. The Swedish government is committed to strengthening the dialogue with the Sami people and to the right of all indigenous peoples to be involved in planning, management, and decision-making. In the same way, we need to work closer together to successfully achieve the Paris Agreement and the goals of Agenda 2030. I wish to emphasize the importance of intensified cross-border cooperation to protect indigenous languages. To that end, I especially welcome the collaboration during the UNESCO Decade of Indigenous Languages. Together with Norway, Finland, and the three Sami parliaments, my government is working to finalize and sign the Nordic Sami Convention. The Nordic Sami Convention will strengthen the rights of the Sami people. The convention is a milestone for regional cooperation and to harmonize the development of Sapmi across the three countries. I wish with all of my heart that we will never have to experience another pandemic. But we learned a lot of things along the way. The pandemic was the clearest possible example of why we're here today. We need to cooperate closely. And the rights of indigenous peoples living in our four countries shall always be one cornerstone of our cooperation and central to the success of our cooperation. Thank you.
Большое спасибо, статс-секретарь Оберг. Спасибо Швеции за вашу поддержку нашего председательства. Мы остаемся в Швеции и послушаем нашего следующего спикера, господина Per-Olof Antti, президента Самского парламента Швеции. Мы очень рады, что вы смогли присоединиться к нам сегодня. Пожалуйста, слово вам. Дорогие коллеги, мои сестры и братья, уважаемые министры, дамы и господа, спасибо за возможность выступить перед вами и дать вам представление о том, что происходит в Швеции с точки зрения самов. Позвольте мне начать с вопроса о расизме. Сегодня в Швеции мы сталкиваемся с большим количеством открытого расизма в отношении самов, особенно самов-оленеводов.
The TV channel TV4 released 2 programs about the increasing harassment of reindeer and reindeer teeth. As an aftermath of the verdicts about the Girjas case in the Supreme Court. Even if more reindeer owners now report cruelty towards reindeer to the police, is obvious that nothing happens. On May 14, one of the local newspapers in north of Sweden published a leader with the headline, "You can measure my skull, but don't take my land," together with a photo of local politicians from Kiruna. The leader was full of allegations toward the reindeer herding communities who are said to obstruct explorations and development in the north. The Sami districts were even called the invisible species, like they didn't belong in the area. Last week, a young Sami girl in Jämtland put a video on TikTok to explain her love for the reindeer and to oppose a common misconception that reindeer herders drive the reindeer on the roads and railways on purpose. Her little video exploded and she received almost 100 racist comments full of anger and hatred towards the Sami, like "you shouldn't exist" and "enjoy hunting reindeer," that TikTok finally had to erase from the conversation. It is very obvious that the time for the Truth Commission has come to raise awareness and increase the knowledge about how the Nordic states have oppressed the Sami people and colonized our lands. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Norway and Finland are on track, and the process on the Swedish side has begun. The Sami parliament has delivered a pre-study to the Swedish government, and we expect that the commission will be going up with the end of this year. We anticipate that the Truth Commission in Norway, Finland, and Sweden will establish a level of the cooperation because many of the historical policies and circumstances are interconnected. But colonization is not only about the past. It is still going on. The green transition to the battle, climate change is creating high expectation of economic boom in Sweden and the Barents region. For example, the largest battery factory in Europe is soon ready to start in its production in Skellefteå. Battery production doesn't only need a lot of electricity, but also a great number of different types of minerals, also available in the north. The boom will have effects on Barents regions as a whole. This green transition or green colonization will challenge traditional indigenous livelihoods and most likely spark new conflicts and litigations in order to clarify indigenous rights to land and water. Before I finish, I also want to say a few words about the pandemic and how it's affected our everyday life, and especially the older generation. As you know, the pandemic has hit Sweden much harder than Norway and Finland. The pandemic has made obvious that Sweden's elderly care has long been neglected, and the care professions have not been enough appreciated. Our elderly people have suffered, and many has died. The Swedish Sami enjoy the Sami rights to healthcare as other Swedes, and are acutely affected when things don't work the way they should. Our young people have also been affected by the restrictions. Each summer, 50 and 60 Sami youth usually take part in a popular confirmation camp organized by the Swedish church. This summer will be a second summer when no camp can be held. Our young people who have looked forward to this particular event when they have the opportunity to get acquainted with young Sami from other parts of our West area are very disappointed. Many live on remote areas and are quite lonely, especially in the South Sami area, and cherish this opportunity to connect with the Sami community. A third issue that will be discussed in the future is probably the subsidies given by the state of support companies during this difficult time. There are rather generous subsidies distributed through the Ministry of Culture to Sami culture workers, but nothing has come out to the Sami Parliament's efforts to apply for support for the reindeer herding companies or Sami trades. The Sami Parliament's Business Committee has on several occasions pointed out to the Ministry of Trade and Industry that need for special financial support for Sami entrepreneurs due to the ongoing pandemic. But there is still no corona support based on the condition of the Sami companies, and many of them do not fulfill the requirement because of their seasonal-based activities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, President Nuti. You raised some very serious issues, and it was very disturbing to hear what you told about racism. We must work together to fight any form of racism against indigenous peoples in the Barents region. And you are right that the work of the Truth Commissions is indeed very important. I believe this summit could be a meeting place where we could find ways to work together for coexistence in the Barents region. And as Foreign Minister Eriksen Søreide mentioned, the indigenous perspective is included in the work of the updating on the Barents Action Plan of Climate Change. Norway and Västerbotten also gives high priority to the youth cooperation, and later in the program we will hear from the youth representative Ageya for the youth perspective. We are very pleased to have the Barents Regional Youth Council with us, and Nikita Ageya, please, over to you.
Barents Cooperation. I want to thank you for the invitation to speak at such an important event. It's very important to give indigenous people and indigenous youth the floor. So 2020 was a great challenge for all of us. The terrible virus has affected all countries, all regions, and indigenous people haven't been spared either. But we are strong in spirit and hope that this situation will not happen again. The main slogan of the Barents Cooperation is people-to-people cooperation across borders. these years, we especially felt the need to communicate with our brothers and sisters, both in the Barents region and around the world. Yeah. It is no secret that the cooperation of indigenous people across borders is of great value for the indigenous people of the Barents region, and especially for young people. The platforms for meeting that the Barents cooperation provides at the moment are an integral parts of the activity of young people and give us the opportunity to meet, learn from each other, help each other, and make plans for the future. It's important. Everything that is important for young people in general is very important for indigenous youth. Access to education, job creation in the regions, support in striving to preserve and develop their native languages. But our lifestyle is sometimes different in that in many regions, indigenous people still lead a traditional way of life and strive to preserve their culture, language, and traditional knowledge and skills. Yeah, it's very important for us to be able to continue the work of our ancestors and to maintain a traditional economy such as reindeer husbandry and fishing, traditional handicrafts, and the preservation and development of our native language. We hope that in our regions, the rules of fishing and reindeer husbandry will be regulated. Norms for the development of regional tourism will be created, especially in those places where indigenous people live. Yeah, and carry out traditional activities and where our sacred places are located. And we are always open to dialogue. The Barents Regional Youth Council is an important tool for youth cooperation because it gives young people an opportunity to be heard both at the regional and state level of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council. And we hope that in the future, our relations will only develop for the better. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your wise words, Nikita gave. The Youth Cooperation is also an important platform for indigenous youth. We look forward to the Youth Summit during the Barents Euro-Arctic Council Foreign Ministers meeting in Tromsø the 26th of October. Friends, we will now hear from the regions. It's a pleasure for me to welcome incoming chair of the Regional Council, Nenets. As you might have seen, we have a small exhibition from Norwegian artist Ingebrigtsen showing photos from Nenets in our program today. Later, you can view this exhibition at the IBS website. But now, Vice Governor of Nenets, Skanich, we look forward to hearing your comments. Please.
Thank you very much, dear moderator, for the given opportunity to greet you on behalf of the governor of the Nenets Autonomous Okrug, and personally, I would like to welcome you to the third Summit of Indigenous Peoples of the Barents region. The summit is held in the year of the Russian Federation chairmanship of the Arctic Council in 2021-23, and this will let us to involve even more attention to the indigenous peoples. The summit was convened to develop dialogue and strengthen cooperation between indigenous peoples, regional and federal governments of Russia, Norway, Finland, and Sweden. Our countries are truly strategic partners. On a solid foundation of friendship and good neighborhood, we have been developing relations on the issues of the indigenous population and international relations, which are the most important component of this. The task of ensuring the socio-economic development of indigenous peoples, preserving the cultural heritage and native languages, traditional economic activities for our countries have become huge priorities. The Nenets Autonomous Okrug has been a member of the Barents Euro-Arctic region for many years. The territory of the Netherlands Autonomous Okrug is the original habitat for the traditional way of life and traditional economic activity of the indigenous small-numbered people in the north, the Nenets. Ethno-generating, ethno-preserving types of traditional economic activities for indigenous peoples are reindeer husbandry, fishing, hunting, gathering, and traditional arts and crafts. We have a lot in common, and most importantly, we are united by the traditional economic activity of reindeer husbandry. Nenets Autonomous Okrug develops cooperation with partners from the northern regions of Norway, Finland, and Sweden. The region's international relations with partners in Barents cooperations are developing most actively in such areas as environmental protection, healthcare, support for indigenous peoples, culture, youth policy. Collaboration with the University Hospital of Northern Norway is in progress. Since 2013, the district has been implementing joint Russian-Norwegian project aimed at introducing e-health technologies in remote, hard-to-reach areas. The Nenets Autonomous Okrug is the main part of the Coal-Arctic Cross-Border Cooperation Program between Russia and the EU, with the support of which joint initiatives in the Barents cooperation are carried out together with our partners. For example, the Russian-Finnish project Reindeer Skin High Quality was implemented with the help of a grant from the Coal-Arctic program. The project helps to improve the quality of reindeer skins and reduce the amount of skins that end up in waste. Today, this program supports the Finnish-Russian project on processing of food and also the reindeer. These projects are aimed on developing a practice of handling reindeer husbandry products, and with the support of Barents Secretariat and that works in Myanmar, we also have joint initiatives in education, sports, and youth policies, including the participation of Nenets Okrug in competitions in Norway. The collaboration between educational organizations in secondary schooling and also combining involving scout organizations. The pandemic of coronavirus infection shook the world and made everyone seriously think about such fundamental things as the value of human life, the fragility of the usual world order. And the more vulnerable became the indigenous peoples, due to the peculiarities of their traditional economic activity and nomadic way of life. Therefore, we need to continue projects in the field of healthcare. In October 2021, the region will take over the chairmanship in the Barents Regional Council for the period 21-23. In this regard, the preparation of the chairmanship program is currently underway, including the determination of priority areas of interaction, planning of events. The plan of main events in connection with the chairmanship in the Russian Federation in the Arctic Council presidency includes the international scientific and practical conferences like Arctic Telemedicine in 2022 and Euro-Arctic. Also, along with annual events within the framework of Children of the Arctic. We are committed to continue constructive interaction, ensuring stable and sustainable development of indigenous peoples. I wish all participants well-being and constructive communication. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your interesting comments, Vice Governor Skanik. We look forward to the chairmanship of the Nenets Autonomous Okrug in the Regional Council. And thank you for bringing up health. That is one of the priorities for our chairmanship, and it's obviously hugely important for the people of the Barents region. They're all. We already had a small taste of the region of Nordland's culture in Ronja Larsen's performance. We were supposed to be in Bodø today, but now we will have to settle for a virtual travel to hear the remarks of Chair of the County Council of Nordland, Thomas Norvald. So give us a little report, Mr. Norvald. How does Bodø look today? Please unmute your microphone, Thomas Norvald.
Oh, like that. That's better. Dear friends and colleagues of the Barents region, I'm Thomas Norvald. I've been the chair of Nordland County Government since 2013. I am really pleased that the Norwegian chairmanship and the Norwegian Sami Parliament will organize such an important event. And I'm really sorry that it could not take place physically here in the sunshine in Bodø. But nevertheless, during the pandemic, we certainly have discovered that we can still connect digitally. There's around 240,000 people that call Nordland home, with many of them being Sami. As such, it pleases me greatly that Nordland has a new additional official name in Lule Sami that recognizes our heritage, which was recently approved by the government. It's Nordlanda. In addition, our border signs with Sweden soon will tell you that you are entering Norway in each of the Sami languages, depending on the respective Sami land that you are entering. I believe that we are actually that region with the greatest variety of Sami languages. We have 5 Sami languages here, which creates a great linguistic and cultural diversity in our county, but it also comes with a great deal of responsibility. The International Decade of Indigenous Languages, starting from 2022, is an initiative we want to take part in wholeheartedly. Part of ensuring this responsibility is by raising the visibility of the respective Sami cultures and languages. One example is that Nordland County has started a program for strengthening the smallest of the Sami languages in Nordland. Nordland County and our regional capital Bodø will be the European Capital of Culture in 2024. The indigenous perspective has a vital part in the program. One of the aims is that by 2024, every person in Nordland will have learned some Sami words. We must work to bring indigenous people into all levels of politics, from the local to the international. By placing indigenous peoples at the center of policy making, we can ensure that those who are indigenous to the Arctic will have their interests represented and considered, especially when so many actions by other states affects our delicate region. We have a lot to learn from the Sami way of life and the inherent focus on sustainability and respect for nature that comes with its traditions have never been more relevant for the world to draw inspiration from. With those words, I wish you the best of luck with the rest of this summit. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thomas Norvald, it was very interesting and nice to have you with us. We will make sure to visit Bodø when we are able to travel again. We will now go back to Finland, Lapland, and Finland will be hosting the next Indigenous Peoples Summit. We are happy to be joined by County Governor of Lapland, Mika Riipi. Welcome, Governor. We look forward to hearing your remarks.
Thank you, moderator. Dear participants, representatives of the indigenous people from all over the Barents. First, I would like to thank organizers from behalf of Regional Council of Lapland about the possibility to participate and give these short greetings to this third Barents Indigenous Summit. which is successfully organized in these challenging, difficult pandemic times. The Sami homeland of Finland is the northernmost part of the region of Lapland, and it's about 1/3 of the whole region's area. Today, this homeland is a home of approximately half of Finland's Sami population. The area is defined in and protected by the Finnish constitution to be autonomous on issues relating to the Sami culture and language. Since 1973, the Sami Parliament of Finland has been the official decision-making body on the Sami culture and language issues. The Sami homeland in Lapland forms a special role to Sami people in a regional policy. The constitutional rights has to be taken into account in all levels of regional policy, regional development, regional land use planning, and regional public service production. All these levels of regional policy has also international and interregional connections. The uniqueness of a Barents area is that we live, work, and have business over borders. Even our logistical system is common. In a similar way, the traditional homelands of the indigenous peoples of Barents goes over current national borders. That means that we have to take the role of the indigenous people into account in every region in the Barents area, not only in a regional policy, but also in every level of interregional collaboration. From regional perspective, that creates challenges, but also significant possibilities to collaboration. One big challenge is the differences in the state-level status, role, and the rights of the indigenous people in Barents countries. From the regional perspective, I would like to highlight that the goal of developing rights and promoting the culture of indigenous people in the whole Barents area in the same way is one of the most important things in future collaboration. We must see this as a great possibility to strengthen and creating even stronger layer for future regional cooperation in all levels. I'm very delighted that this important theme is has been inside the Norway's chairmanship on BEAC and also in Västerbotten's chairmanship in Regional Council, and it is strongly inside the coming Finland's chairmanship on Barents collaboration. Dear participants, the Barents cooperation has a long and unique history. Kirkenes Declaration almost 30 years ago started a multi-level collaboration where both state and regional level has a strong role. Lapland has been one of the proud members of the 14 regions in the Barents Regional Council. From the beginning of Barents collaboration, history of the indigenous people have had an active part and active role in all levels. On behalf of the Regional Council of Lapland, I wish that this role will stay strong and we can together develop the whole Barents area to face the big future challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor Riipi. That was very well put and a great conclusion to session 1. I would like to thank all speakers for sharing your thought-provoking interventions. The host of the summit will now give their concluding remarks for this part of our meeting. Foreign Minister and Chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, Eriksen Søreide, has been sitting next to me here in our Oslo studio, listening with great interest. Please, Foreign Minister, share your thoughts from this first session.
Well, thank you so much, Göril. You're absolutely right. It's been very interesting to listen to the very, I would say, different perspectives. And I would like to extend a warm thank you to all of our speakers. And this summit brings together governments, regions, indigenous peoples organizations, researchers, performers, and I have to say, beautiful artists. It was really incredibly moving to listen to, and I'm really also looking forward to when we can meet again, and I will get back to that at the end of my remarks. But hearing experts elaborate further on the situation for Indigenous people will definitely make us even more inspired to continue what I absolutely sense is our joint efforts. And new insights will also help us to expand future cooperation between Indigenous peoples in the Barents region. And I'd also like to comment that the support to our chairmanship's work on establishing a Barents financial mechanism is very, very positive seen from our side, and we are very thankful for that. So hopefully the mechanism will be adopted at the ministerial meeting in October, and I think this will make it possible to fund more of our projects and to add further substance to our work, and that is why we have been working so hard to finalize it. Let me also thank our co-host, Sami, Chair of the Regional Council Västerbotten, and the Working Group for Indigenous Peoples, as well as the ever-supportive International Barents Secretariat. And collaborating on this event has been a true Barents adventure. And to quote an Inari Sami proverb, as many streams unite, a great river is born. And time again, we have witnessed how friendship, how collaboration built over more than 30 years across the borders in the Barents region, they continue to develop. And what we have heard here today and seen here today is exactly the same. Everyone is talking about those strong ties that keep developing, even in difficult times like those we are in at the moment. I very much look forward to discussing new ways to strengthen Barents cooperation at the Barents Euro-Arctic Council ministerial meeting in Tromsø on October 26th. I look forward to see you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister Eriksen Søreide. President of the Sami Digi of Norway, Elias Keskitalo, in your intervention you underlined the importance of dialogue between the indigenous peoples and the states in the Barents region. Now we have heard from both governments, regions, and the Sami parliaments and Raipon. And after the event, the organizers will produce a report from the summit that we will share with all of you. Please, President Keskitalo, how did you find this first session? We look forward to hearing your comments.
Året Barentsvärdet, dear Barents friends and colleagues. I would like to thank you all for much inspiring and informative remarks. And a special thanks to Ronja Larsen for her beautiful opening song, Kiitos, Ronja. The meetings that starts with music are always the best meetings, and this is also true today. Arts and cultural expression speaks to our hearts and gives strength to tackle challenges brought to our attention today and makes it easier to spot possibilities. I'm very excited about the enthusiasm of contributing to the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, and I look forward to discussing that topic later today. I would also like to inform you all when it comes to the cooperation between Indigenous peoples and the states we live in, as well as the regions and the municipalities we live in. We have stepped a step forward in Norway last week when the National Parliament, Stortinget, accepted a special act of law when it comes to consultations between the Sami people and the different levels of government in Norway. And I would like to lift that act of law forward as an example of good practice that I hope will inspire also the other states and Indigenous peoples in the Barents region. I look forward to continuing our discussions later today. For now, Kiitos. Thank you.
Thank you, President Keskitalo. Kiitos. The work will continue, the dialogue will go on. We will all make sure it does together. Now we will have the final remarks from the chair of the Regional Council, Helene Hellmark Knutsson. Governor Hellmark Knutsson, do you also feel inspired to continue our work?
I do. Thank you so much, Garil, and all distinguished speakers. Thank you for your very interesting comments. You all underlined the importance of the indigenous people in the Barents cooperation, and your interventions really put the focus on what is unique in the Barents cooperation. The indigenous people's participations are in all spheres of the cooperation, and you really inspire us all to continue working with this and deepening the strengthening the cooperation. I would just like to add that the General Assembly of the United Nations has proclaimed 2022 to 2032 as the International Decade of the Indigenous Languages. And I'm glad to see that the second part of today's seminar is dedicated to Indigenous languages. That is a good kickoff for the working with the language issue in the coming 10 years. And because there is an urgent need to preserve, revitalize and promote Indigenous languages and to take urgent steps to the national and international levels. As Minister Suri, I also would like to thank the co-hosts, the Sami Parliament of Norway, the Norwegian chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council, and the Barents Working Group of Indigenous People. This team showed with them the strength of the Barents cooperation, and together we will make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor, and we look forward to our next event together with Västerbotten. Thank you all for watching session 1. Let me once again express gratitude to the Working Group of Indigenous Peoples. Chair Piera Heikka-Muotka had been working really hard with us to secure a good program today, and he was supposed to co-chair the summit together with me today. Unfortunately, he was not able to attend due to the tragic and sudden passing of his father. Please, Piera, we would like to express warm thoughts to you and your family from the whole Barents group. Lars Anders Berg from the Working Group of Indigenous Peoples will be moderating part 2 with a focus on languages. So we look forward to seeing you at 1300 Oslo time. We will see you again in a little more than 1 hour. Have a good lunch break.